Call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, October 20th, 2022. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Kroll, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knobloch.
Here.
Commissioner Bradley. Commissioner Heikkila.
Here.
Chair Schwartz.
Here.
Commissioner Casey.
Here.
Commissioner Schmolke.
Here.
And Commissioner Geisler.
Here.
Thank you. Our first order of business this evening is to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Heikkila, second by Geisler. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the approval of the September 15th meeting minutes.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch.
I move that we approve the minutes from September 15th meeting.
Second.
Motion by Heikkila, second by Knobloch.
Other way
Or,
around.
Motion by Knobloch, second by Heikkila. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain.
I will abstain also.
So minutes are passed with 2 abstentions, Commissioners Casey and Chair Schwartz. Our first order of business this evening is planning case 21-14, a conditional use permit revocation for Humble Crew Citywide PPF and detail at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. Mr. Kroll.
Good evening, the Planning Commission. As you recall from our last meeting, we had brought forth a revocation for a conditional use permit at Citywide and at Humble Crew on a number of conditions that were met on their conditional use permit involving the landscaping, parking lot striping, and the trash enclosure. We did a site visit with the property owner and determined that they had met those conditions. They are still waiting on a gate on the trash enclosure, I think just because of some supply chain issues that they're experiencing at the moment. But they've done the landscaping to our standards and striped the parking lot, and we feel good about the progress they've made on the trash enclosure. And so we had given them a little time since the last meeting to this meeting just to further make progress, and we felt like they have. So we are, as a city, kind of officially withdrawing our application for the revocation of that conditional use permit.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? All right, we have a public hearing that was continued from last month, so I will reopen that public hearing and then close that public hearing. And do we have a motion on this case?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
in planning case 21-14, I move that we accept the withdrawal of the application to revoke a conditional use permit for Humble Crew detailing, citywide PPF and detail.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Our next order of business is planning case 21-11, conditional use permit revocation for NJR seamless gutters at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, and here again, similar to the previous case, both of these were tied to those site improvements at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. And again, when we met with them on Monday, felt like they made the right amount of progress on that site. And so here again, we're just recommending to withdraw our application for revoking the conditional use permit.
And Mr. Kroll, is it correct that they only need one trash enclosure for the entire building?
Yeah, that's correct. And then the trash enclosure, really in our code, it's just to ensure that the dumpsters that they're providing, they're able to actually fit in the trash enclosure and can be screened properly. And so it is my understanding that the trash enclosure is shared by that building, and we feel that's adequate.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Mr.
Commissioner?
Chair.
Commissioner Heikler?
Mr. Kroll, how long do these folks have to complete this? If, in fact, it doesn't happen, does the whole process start completely all over again?
We probably wouldn't start the whole process again and would just continue to work with them if, for some reason with the supply chain, they're not able to put in the gate before the ground freezes, or with winter if it causes more challenges. We would just stay in communication with them and try as soon as possible in the spring or once they're able to get that gate up and officially finish their trash enclosure. But we wouldn't have like necessarily a set date right now or restart this whole process.
Mr. Chair, if I could clarify, we do have other tools at our disposal, which would include administrative citations. We have used that process in the past for some zoning-related violations. So, we still have potential remedies if, for some reason, they didn't proceed with the project. I think we're, given the fact that they've invested what they have in that improvement, we're pretty confident that they're going to get it completed, and we'll stay on top of them to try and do it in a timely fashion. But neither they nor the city are really in control of the timing of that gate, as I understand it. But there are remedies that we do have at our disposal if we need to pursue that.
Thank you, Mr. Fernelius. Any other questions from commission? All right, again, I will reopen the public hearing on this matter. It was continued from last month, and then close that public hearing. And commission, any actions?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Schmolke.
In planning case 21-11, we'll accept the withdrawal of the application to revoke a conditional use permit for NJR seamless gutters.
Second.
Motion by Schmolke, second by Casey. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion is passed. Our next order of business is planning case 20, or revocation of a conditional use permit, planning case 0117 at 570 Northdale Boulevard Northwest. Judith Oquist. Mr. Kroll.
Not sure if I'll have my slides up, but here, this is more of a administrative revocation at the property of 570 Northdale Boulevard. On March 22nd of 2001, the City Planning Commission approved a home occupation permit for a beauty salon business at 570 Northdale Boulevard, and at that time, those home occupation permits were really filed as a conditional use permit against the property, and went through administrative review and renewal. And the home occupation permit was renewed through 2020, and then here in 2022, our administrative staff have gone through and flagged that this one had changed ownership. And so in that case, we want to revoke this conditional use permit, really to kind of clean the title and remove that from the property. As you'll see tonight and on other home occupation permits that we approve now, it's not kind of recorded against the property like that at the county anymore, and is really just tied to the individual. So really just an administrative cleanup. I believe we had another one in July or August from Mr. Hansen, so pretty much the same kind of process here. We did send a letter to the current homeowner, and he had indicated that they were not running a beauty salon business, and so just communicated if they were ever interested in a home occupation permit in the future that they can apply and go through our process now. So here really our recommendation is to revoke the home occupation slash conditional use permit for a beauty salon business based on the finding that the property to which the home occupation was issued changed ownership, and that a home occupation is now issued to an individual applicant and no longer runs with the land.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commission, any questions for Mr. Kroll? All right, we do need a public hearing. I will open a public hearing in planning case 0117, the revocation of a conditional use permit at 570 Northdale Boulevard. Anyone wish to speak on this revocation? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing, limit comments to the commission.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch.
if there are no comments or input from the commission, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
In planning case 01-17, the planning commission revoked the home occupation conditional use permit for a beauty salon business based on the finding that the property to which the home occupation was issued has changed ownership, and a home occupation is now issued to an individual applicant and no longer runs with the land.
Second.
Motion by Knobloch, second by Geisler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And this is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to city council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. The next case is another revocation of a conditional use permit for planning case 12-15 at 8870 Mississippi Boulevard Northwest. Amy Erickson. Mr. Kroll.
All right. Yeah, here again, very similar to the last case. In this time, the home occupation permit or conditional use permit was approved on September 20th of 2012 and had been renewed through 2020. And then our administrative staff, again, go through that about every 2 years. And so they had flagged that this one had changed ownership again. So just in an effort to help clean up the title and take that off of the property, this was a time, again, when it was recorded against the property and kind of, again, just administrative cleanup to revoke that conditional use permit, home occupation, given that it, again, now they don't run with the property and are to an individual applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. And again, I need to open a public hearing in this matter, so I will open a public hearing in planning case 12-15, a revocation of a conditional use permit at 8870 Mississippi Boulevard Northwest. Anyone wish to speak on this case? Seeing none, close public hearing, limit comment to the commission. And commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
I'll make a motion in planning case 12-15 that we revoke the home occupation conditional use permit for a yoga class business based on the finding that the property to which the home occupation was issued has changed ownership, and the home occupation is now issued to an individual applicant and no longer runs with the land.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Knobloch. All in favor, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And that motion carries. And again, this is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. Next, we have planning case 22-20, a home occupation permit for a screen repair business at 328 Egret Boulevard Northwest. Ned and Lela McCarty. Mr. Kroll.
All right. So here, this home occupation permit is in our low-density residential 2 district. The applicants currently operate a window and door screen repair business at an off-site facility, but some customers do come to their residence to either pick up repaired screens or to drop off screens that are in need of repair. The customers park in the applicant's driveway and walk to the front door of the residence. The applicants indicate that they store the screens in about 100 square foot room in the home for that drop off and pickup. And again, the actual repairing of the screens occurs in an off-site facility, and this was brought to us by our property maintenance staff and running through just because there were customers coming to the home that does require a home occupation permit with the city of Coon Rapids. So going through our standards of approval that we have for home occupation permits, we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Their driveway's got adequate space for customers to come pick up and drop off. And so kind of looking at our key things in our standards of approval that we're looking for, we recommend approval of this home occupation permit, and then with those conditions that we've typically attached to the home occupation permit that are pulled right from those standards. So just ensuring that vehicles are parked in the driveway, any future sign for the home occupation permit adheres to our city code section 11-1203. The hours of operations are limited between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m., that the business wouldn't operate more than 30 hours per week, occupy no more than 400 square feet of space, that the screens would need to be stored inside and cannot be stored outside on the property, and then just general kind of compliance with Title 11. So I'm here to help answer any questions, and we do have the applicants here as well if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Geisler?
Mr. Cole, in the case here, we have two listed individuals. So is this required that it goes with both, or one, or just structurally, how does that land?
Sure, yeah.
So the home occupation permit, of course, goes with both the applicants and the house. I think looking at it from the perspective of the property more than the person.
So if only one individual was still in that property, it would still,
Be fine. Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kroll, so there's no signage there at this time indicating that? It's just-
Not that I'm aware of, and it wasn't indicated in the application, so if there was any kind of future signage there, there is some rules in our standards of approval around kind of the size of that signage in a residential area, but I'm not aware of any signage, and it wasn't in the application.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything the petitioners would like to add? If so, please go to the microphone. Give your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Ned McCarty, 328 Egret Boulevard, Northwest Coon Rapids, Minnesota, 55448. People have been dropping off screens there for 30 years. You finally caught us. But we don't do any work there. We take it to the shop, bring it back. The citizens of Coon Rapids, rather than drive all the way to Brooklyn Park or Osseo, I just say drop it off at the house. So I'm trying to sell my business, so you won't have to put up with me much longer.
And concerning the signage, is there not a sign on the property?
I think it says screen repair out front, yeah.
So, Mr. Kroll, do they need to meet our sign ordinance requirements for that sign?
Probably more than likely, depending on when it was put up. But yeah, we could look at that and see if it meets our current sign requirements. I guess, yeah, I haven't seen it or don't know the size of it, and would want to.
I think we're grandfathered in.
Yeah, I've driven by numerous times, and I do recall seeing that there is that sign out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think it's something we could look at or work with the applicants on, but,
Okay.
yeah, I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure
All right,
what the size of it is.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Commission, any questions for Mr. Kroll? All right, we need a public hearing on this matter, so I will open a public hearing in planning case 22-20, a home occupation permit for a screen repair business at 328 Egret Boulevard. Anyone wish to speak on public hearing on this matter? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
in planning case 22-20, I move that we approve the home occupation permit with the listed conditions in our packet.
I second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Schmolke. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. Otherwise, good luck. Our next case is planning case 22-21, a home occupation permit for music lesson business at 11120 Yukon Street Northwest. Max Kirkeide? Kirkeide? Yep. Thank you. Mr. Kroll.
Yep, so here again, the applicant is requesting approval of a home occupation permit for a music lesson business. This is also in our low-density residential 2 district. They would want to operate a one-on-one music lesson business for guitar, bass, ukulele, mandolin, and banjo. The applicant has indicated they book lessons in 30 to 60-minute blocks, an average between 9 and 15 clients, with about 25% of those taking lessons virtually and not actually coming to the home. So really this home occupation permit is for the in-person lessons happening with customers coming to the home. For those that come to the home, they're scheduled to come one at a time, and then typical hours for lessons are anywhere between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday, and the applicant indicated that also includes time for breaks and different turnover and stuff, and it's not necessarily that there will be someone with in-person lessons 10 to 6 every day like that. So again, going through our standards of approval, we didn't see any major red flags there. The lessons would take place in a front living room of the home, so this was maybe a little hard to see on the screen, but was a floor plan that was submitted by the applicant, just kind of showing that front living room where the in-person lessons would take place. And so here again, we're recommending approval for the home occupation permit with those conditions, and I just made the little caveat that the in-person lessons would operate a maximum of 30 hours per week, since that's where the case where a customer is coming to the home that kind of triggers a home occupation permit. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant's also here to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Kroll? Does the petitioner have anything they'd like to add?
That's all accurate.
Thank you. All right, at this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 22-21, a home occupation permit for music lesson business at 11120 Yukon Street. Anyone wish to speak to this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Schmolke.
in planning case 22-21, the planning commission, I'll make a motion to approve the home occupation permit with the conditions as cited.
Second.
Yeah.
Motion by Schmolke, second by Geisler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. Otherwise, good luck.
Thank you.
Our next case is planning case 22-22, an ordinance amendment for a multiple pet location. Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, so I'll just give some background and then highlight the main change, and then happy to help answer any questions. So the city of Coon Rapids is currently and has been working on an update to its animal control ordinance. I think there's been a number of items that they've identified that are a little outdated and want to do a refresh. They did have a city council work session on April 12th of this year where they discussed a couple of different items, including animal licensing, the multiple pet permit, and then the definition of dog barking. As it relates to the case in front of you today, they kind of staff and council determined that changing the multiple pet permit requirements to 4 or more animals seemed to be more in alignment with the practice and hopefully have better compliance. I think they acknowledge that there's been pretty low numbers of people actually submitting licenses that they have on record versus what we expect for the number of pets in the city. So hopefully this would, with this readjustment, trying to find a balance to have something a little bit more applicable to the work that they're doing and hope more people comply. So most of this is in Title 6 of City Code, but in Title 11 in our zoning code, we do have the definition of a multiple pet location, and that's in the definition section 11-201. And then it's also listed in our use table for residential districts in section 11-601. And so really because of that, we just want to ensure that the multiple pet location definition in our zoning code would align with the new definition in the animal code. And so really we're, and because it falls in our zoning code, presenting it to the Planning Commission and then the City Council. And this is really coming from an administrative standpoint to just maintain code consistency and language across different chapters in the code. So just looking at what the notable change would be, the multiple pet location currently is a place not constituting a kennel where 3 or more dogs, cats, or any combination thereof over 6 months of age are kept. And that would change to a new definition of a place not constituting a kennel where 4 or more dogs, cats, or any combination thereof over 6 months of age are kept. And so really kind of thinking about that day-to-day impact as a resident in Coon Rapids, really the change that would happen on the ground is that an individual or household who has 3 dogs or cats or some combination of those two would no longer need to apply for a multiple pet permit. And I think the police department and city staff had acknowledged that most people probably aren't submitting that license right now. So it's not really changing much, and it's more just focusing on individuals that have 4 dogs or cats or more and getting them to apply for a multiple pet permit. And so kind of next steps, pending your recommendation for approval to the City Council, it would go to their November 15th meeting and be introduced, and then it would be approved. I believe it's their December 6th meeting. So I'm happy to address any questions, and I know Grant's available for any questions. But yeah, really our recommendation here is to recommend approval of the ordinance revising this definition, again, so for code consistency and would align with the changes that they're making in the animal code.
And Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Chair Schwartz. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have a hypothetical question. If the police or the city staff were brought into a resident's home and they find 5 dogs, 6 dogs, 5, 6 pets, cats and dogs, snakes, whatever, multiple, would that resident be cited or given a ticket in the current ordinances and standards in the city of Coon Rapids?
Oh, sure.
Mr. Chair, I think that would initiate a conversation. Community development staff doesn't enforce that part of the code. We do, collaborate with the police department. I would suspect in a situation like that, if there are other issues, there are sanitary conditions, conditions of the property that, we need to get involved in from a housing or a building code standpoint, we would come in and participate, assist the police department in that. Every situation is going to be different. Obviously, if they have more animals than what would be allowed, there would be a conversation probably at a minimum about applying for a multiple pet permit. There is a process, there are conditions that you need to meet. And then beyond that, I guess it would depend on the circumstances of that case.
Mr. Chair, and I can speak to the police part of that, because that's part of my job. What we typically see with most of the pet-related things is education up front, opportunity to gain compliance, and then if compliance isn't gained, then we pursue citations and other mechanisms available. But usually the first interaction, absent something exceptional, is education.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Commissioner Schmolke?
So a question I have, is there, with this ordinance, is there any sort of minimum square footage requirement that goes with it? I mean, if we're increasing the number of pets that we're saying they can have, is there any, I mean, I'm thinking of the animals, sorry, you know, it's like if you're gonna add more animals, do you have the space to support that, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know if there's square footage tied to the, I don't know all the conditions to the
Right,
multiple pet permit, but I guess what I will say with this change, you know, if someone already has 4 or more, they're supposed to apply for this permit. So really the change is only if someone had 3 dogs or like 3 cats or like 2 dogs and 1 cat, they would no longer need to apply for a
Understood.
multiple pet permit. So it's not necessarily increasing the number that we're allowing, it's really
No.
just, yeah, like.
And in a way, yes, no, but I'm just thinking, it's like if you have a bigger home, obviously you probably have the space for dogs to begin with. And again, I understand that this is for the permit, but one would influence the other, hence I was just asking, so.
Yeah. no,
Okay,
think
I
that-
understand
yeah,
what this is about, though.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that makes sense.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify on Commissioner Schmolke's question. So I am looking at Chapter 6-200, 208 specifically, which talks about the application. And there are 12 different conditions or things that we do look at, including method used to keep premises in a sanitary condition. So I think that's all evaluated as
Great,
part of the
thank you.
application.
Perfect.
Cool, thanks.
Commissioner Heikela?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You talked about there being very few applicants or permits for 3 or more currently. Do you think that's because people are skirting this rule? And is it going to continue to get, when they get to 4? And the second part, follow-up to that would be, what's the maximum number of pets, cats, dogs, monkeys, chimpanzees, whatever, that they have in a house?
Yeah, so I guess in the first part of the question, I did read through the notes of that work session from April, and it seemed like the data that they had, actually the majority of the multiple pet permit applications were for 4 or more. I think maybe the highest permit application they had was someone had 7 dogs and cats. So I think that's where this change for 4 or more is coming from. For the majority of people that are going through the process and submitting the permit already have 4 or more. So I think that's part of that change. And then to the second part of your question, I know dogs and cats are kind of treated a little bit differently in the code, and they kind of fall under some different nuisance laws and things that are at play. And then there's like domestic animals and then non-domestic animals. So any non-domestic animal is not allowed in the city of Coon Rapids, and the code details kind of what those are. So different kinds of exotic pets like apes and monkeys and like poisonous snakes and things like that. But then there is the domestic animal definition that I think covers more like hamsters and like some of those things. I'm not aware of if there's a limit or a permit for those types of animals. I think talking with our animal control coordinator, it seemed like there's difficulty in that because those animals are typically inside the home, and if someone's not disclosing that information, it could cross a gray area of kind of regulating what someone's doing in their private household. So that's kind of the background that I have, but again, like the planning staff aren't really involved in the enforcement of this permit.
So you're saying the maximum that you've heard or seen about, or heard about is 7?
Yeah, that's correct, yep.
7 dogs, 7 cats, combination?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact breakdown, but yeah, some combination of dogs and cats, yep.
It seems excessive to me, but.
Mr. Chair, I am looking at the report that previous Chief Wise issued to the council back in April, and there is a list of the multiple pet permits as of January 31st of this year. And it does look like there was a situation where there were actually 12. So this showed 41 permits at the time, and I think the highest number was 12. Now, we don't have information. That could be a very large property. There could be ample room for that. 12 might be entirely appropriate in that situation. But not knowing that, I can't really speak to the specifics of it.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Crowe, I just wanted to call out, just since it's not in our packet, the definition of a kennel is also being updated from 3 to 4. It looks like just to match the multiple pet and kennel are moving from 3 to 4. So just to put that on the record that they're both coming along based on the ordinance we got.
Sure, okay. Yeah, and I think maybe our kennel definition currently says three or more than 2 or something. I don't.
What's in the packet
Yeah.
here says a business where formerly 3, now 4, or more dogs, cats, or combination thereof, and no changes after that.
Okay.
So it's just an update from 3 to 4
Okay.
in that definition as well.
Okay.
So, Mr. Kroll, do I understand that what you're saying is staff and the city basically feel that people are not applying for permits when they've got 3, but they think they're gonna apply if they've got 4?
Yeah, I guess, I wasn't involved in all of those discussions. I think it was just that the majority of the permits that were coming through were for 4 or more, so I think they were just trying to change the code to align more with kind of what is reality or what people are actually submitting the permit for. But otherwise, yeah, beyond that, I don't really have too much background because I wasn't directly involved in the initial discussions.
Yeah, Mr. Fredelia, since you have that report, does it say how many people have 3?
Yeah, there's a spreadsheet that actually lists, and there's a number on here that have 3. Now, keep in mind, there could be many more that have 3 that don't have a permit. These are the households that actually applied for a permit. So, I as well was not part of that work session discussion, but I did hear kind of a recap. And really coming out of it, I think the direction was, we need something that's more practical from an enforcement standpoint. I don't think the council direction was we want to drop the multiple pet permit requirement completely. As part of this and completely separate from what we're talking about, licensing of individual dogs and cats, that practice did end as a result of it. So I think this is trying to address the concerns when someone has, a larger number of pets and just the public safety concerns, the sanitary concerns, those kinds of things, and really trying to encourage, compliance. And hopefully we'll, if there are, these individuals will continue to renew their licenses, and if someone else has 4 or more pets, they'll comply as well. That's the hope, that's the goal. And that's what we kind of understand was really the genesis of these changes.
Mr. Chair.
Does this particular ordinance cover such things as chickens, rabbits?
Correct. I believe so. I think Chapter 6, or Title 6, is the Animal Control and Licensing Ordinance, and I think chickens are part of that. So anything related to animal control is covered under Chapter 6, including kennels and multiple pets, which is what's being updated.
Chickens can only be allowed 4 right now anyway, right? and they
Correct.
can't be inside.
That's a completely separate application and process. So that's not, we have a separate process for dealing with permitting of chickens, if you want to keep chickens.
Mr. Chair.
And do we know what neighboring cities have as far as kennels, licenses, 3, 4, 17, 20?
Mr. Chair, I don't, I think in this report, there was just some anecdotal evidence. I believe they did look at the city of, I think Ramsey, maybe Blaine. So they looked at some of our neighboring communities, and I think that was also part of the basis of these recommendations, is we wanted to have regulations that were similar to some of our surrounding communities. And I think we had provisions that were more restrictive, and so some of these standards were loosened as a result of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmoke.
Thank you. So I want to just clarify what's being recommended. So it says recommend approval of an ordinance. There's an ordinance in place already, correct? And it includes the definition of the multiple pet location, or is it the city code that includes the definition and we're amending that? I'm just not clear what we're doing.
You're amending the definitions.
We're amending the
In
definition. So
Title
this is not
11.
approving an ordinance then. We are,
Right.
right? Because that
Correct.
implies that we're requesting a new ordinance, correct? So this isn't really worded correctly. Do I understand that? Because it says approval of an ordinance revising the definition.
So just to clarify, I mean, that's how we make code changes, is
Okay,
by
so that's
ordinance as
proper.
opposed to resolution.
Okay.
So this is being done by
It
ordinance.
could be
Perfect. Okay.
recommend approval of an ordinance amendment.
That's fine. I
Yeah.
can leave it as is. It just was a little confusing, so I wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Relatively minute change in the code.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Heikkila.
Thank you. Do multiple pet permits expire?
My understanding is they have to be renewed, yes. I think they're on an annual basis, I believe.
On an annual basis?
I believe so, yes.
So if somebody has to have a pet put down or whatever, what happens? Then they wouldn't have to have theirs renewed or whatever unless they
Yeah,
replaced it,
I guess that's what would happen.
You know?
So, I mean, we again, community development staff doesn't administer it, so I don't know the intricacies of how that process works, but I imagine like other licenses or permits that are renewed, we typically, for example, with rental licenses, we send out a letter. So I suspect something similar is done where the holder of the current license is notified that they need to renew, and there's a process that they go through.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
For Planning Commissioner Kroll. I think this policy in general is poor policy. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense, because all you need is 2 pets, 1 male, 1 female, and you'll have a litter, dogs, cats, whatever. So I think this policy doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface or underneath, so I will not approve or vote for this change, because I think it doesn't address the root cause of what it's implied it's going to help to do. So I just wanted to provide an explanation of that. So I think there's a lot of, and this is a policy issue for the council to address, but I don't want to place it on the Planning Commission or staff, but that is something for the city council to delve into a little further, because if they want to adhere policy changes, I know there's multiple other avenues that can be explored to get that, rather than making it a little bit less lenient or easier for people to have more pets. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Commissioner Bucciacone. Mr. Bucciacone, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I appreciate the promotion. Just to clarify here about the litter piece of things. If you look at the definition, what we're changing is 3 to 4, and then it goes into over 6 months of age. So that's a pretty old litter, but, yep.
Go fast.
Of course, the old definition had 6 months or older as well.
It did, yes. The change here is literally going from 3 to 4.
Yeah. It's really, I think, just to change that to align with the changes that are already coming in another code in the Title VI. And so this is just to ensure that, because we have this definition in our zoning code, that it aligns with the definition that they're moving forward with in Title VI. I think, you know, we've recognized this isn't maybe something planning commissions and other places really kind of get involved in or are really in charge of regulating or enforcing. But we're kind of going through this formality because it is in Title 11 that it has to come to the planning commission and then city council to make any changes to the code.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Heikkila.
I also agree with Mr. Knobloch that it is kind of something that needs to be reworked a little better than it is. Following up on that, we have a large dog in our house, and I know if there were to be 4 of them, and we have a 4-bedroom house, it would be quite a mess to have 4 dogs and maintain the yards, et cetera, et cetera. And then with that, when we walk the dog, we have 2 places that we walk by, or that I do, that have 3 dogs right now. And you walk by and you just hope that all 3 dogs are not outside, because you will be, you know, you'll be harassed the entire time. And I think encouraging more dogs in some of these places is not in our best interest, I guess, is how I'll say it.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
3 to 4 doesn't make much difference in my opinion, but I think we also have to look at surrounding communities, kind of what they're doing too. We can't set ourselves up as the most stringent entity in the community. Let's go with the flow a bit. I think 3 to 4 is moderate. The piece that I see is people have to be educated about this license requirement, which maybe they aren't. They think it's okay, and maybe as enforcement comes along, that'll be more of an issue, you know, that they will get educated. So I'm good revising the definition and letting the ordinance stand as it will.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Schmolke.
I'll just ask this question. What are we expecting to be the change that will occur by changing this from 3 to 4?
Yeah, I think kind of what's on this screen, the impact really is if someone now has 3 dogs or cats or a combination of them, they would no longer need to apply for a multiple pet permit. So if someone already has 4 or more, it's like, it's currently our policy that they need a multiple pet permit. You know, whether or not they're actually applying for that, that's something, you know, that as staff are made aware of in that education piece and working with homeowners on this. It's not, I wouldn't say this isn't really encouraging more pets. It's really just saying now if you have 3 dogs or cats, you no longer need to apply for the multiple pet permit.
So then, if I'm interpreting this correctly, the hope is that where we think we might have a number of households or who might be in violation of this kind of relieves that, correct? So we're more or less kind of bending to the masses where we see that there's more animals than what are being allowed for the permit, right, or for this multiple pet location, right? So we're relaxing it, is what we're doing.
For those that have 3 dogs or cats, yes.
I
So we're
think that's the
relaxing it?
public policy goal of the overarching changes that are being made. From a zoning standpoint, and Dakota touched on this, I think it's also important to understand that in our use table, we don't allow multiple pet permits in every zoning district. So there are certain zoning districts where, when we would sign off on a multiple pet permit, if it's, for example, in a townhome development or an apartment project, from a zoning standpoint, now, obviously how that's managed from a landlord standpoint or a homeowners association is separate, but from a zoning standpoint, we would not issue a multiple pet permit in those districts. So that's why I think in part this definition is in the zoning code, is that we are defining areas where it's permitted and where it's not. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have two questions. So if we're basing it off the zoning of the city, so that's, to me, that's implying that there is a size component to how many pets are allowed per square foot. That's just implied in my understanding how I hear it. So that that can be clarified if that's incorrect or correct thinking on my part. The second thing is, what is the cost? I have one pet. So, but I want to ask, what is the multiple pet permit cost for a resident in Coon Rapids? I have one big dog which eats and does stuff
Mr.
like a horse, but
55.
Mr. Chair, I guess I don't know off the top of my head if it's listed in the report.
and the single is still what, 15, 10?
It says 55 on the application.
Okay,
And
Mr.
it's,
Chair,
thank you.
New applicants will be charged another 110 for inspection.
And Mr. Chair, could I just address Commissioner Knobloch's other point? I mean, there are a number of things in our code where codes overlap. So Chapter 6 and the zoning code is not the only area where there's an overlap between codes. There are cross-references. There are, numerous references between the two. Because there's an interplay between land use and regulation of, in this case, animals. The same thing happens with building and housing codes. So that's not uncommon. In fact, that's a fairly common practice.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Venelius.
And the fee is $55.
Commissioner Geisler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question just in general for staff. Planning Commission is not responsible for Title VI at all, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So all the contents of Title VI are really not germane to what we're doing here. Every piece of discussion we're having here today is about Title XI and how it applies to land use. So what happens with multiple pet permit, how it gets enforced, all that is not what we're doing here today. Am I understanding that correctly? That's the
Correct.
boundary of what we should be working on today is Title XI?
That's correct.
So, I think the question we have is the adjustment to Title XI appropriate? I guess the question that was raised earlier that I would say is this came from a council work session to come to us, and then it's going back to council to make the decision. So council has already kind of indicated what they would like to have happen here, which is part of what we're supposed to be doing as well, is helping enact that. I think we're getting in the weeds on something that's way outside of our scope here, getting into that in Title VI. I know we still have a public comment that we have to open, otherwise, I would like us to call this question as soon as possible, please.
Commission, any other questions before I open a public hearing? All right, this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 22-22, an ordinance amendment for multiple pet location. Anyone wish to speak to this case? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and limit comment to the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
in planning case, I will make that motion to move. In planning case 22-22, I move that Planning Commission recommend approval of an ordinance revising the definition of multiple pet location and amending City Code Section 11-201.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Schmolke. Any further discussion? I'll go on the record and say that I'm not going to vote for this. I feel 3 dogs and/or cats, a combination thereof, is sufficient. The fact that it's being raised, at least partially because people are currently not getting licenses because they have 3, is not a reason to raise it to 4. And for that reason, I cannot support raising it to 4.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I agree with you. That is the whole purpose of this planning commission, is to review. I know we're only supposed to decide on the definition, but it directly connects with the purpose and the intent of the ordinance of what we're talking about. So what I'm saying is, I think this is terrible, or not terrible, it's a harsh word. It's a not good policy direction, I believe, in my opinion. And I agree with you and Commissioner Heikla as well, that I don't think this is the solution to fixing the issue. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
So regardless of how we feel about the multiple pet, in my opinion, of making sure our code is harmonized and in synchrony with itself is more important to provide clear and guidance to the city and to its citizens of what the city expects of them. Title VI, we don't get to decide what happens there. And if they are making changes to the multiple pet permit, we need to make sure that we align with that. Otherwise, the ordinances don't align and it creates more confusion. I think the opportunity to express our desire to individually to not do this is absolutely available at the city council meeting as citizens, but as a commission for Title 11, I don't see any reason not to vote for this, and I would recommend approval of this as well.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Mr. Chair, just one thing. I guess,
Commissioner Schmolke.
before you ask the question, I guess I would just ask the commission to consider what Commissioner Geisler just said. I realize people have stated some opinions, but I think his point is on spot. And it's like, if we have issues as citizens or of the community, we should be taking it to the city council, but I think that what is in front of us is what we should be voting on.
I think I would just point out this final decision is up to the council, and whether we go along with the recommendation or not, it's the council's decision as to whether it gets changed or not. And just because the commission perhaps may not be in favor of it, does not mean that the city council can't make the change. Any other comments?
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I concur. We're not elected. We're here in an advisory role, and we're supposed to provide advice, not rubber stamp to if we deem a decision to be good or bad, it's our advisory role to provide that input, discussion, to provide it to the council. They are elected. They have the responsibility for the voters and to be accountable to their decisions. And we're supposed to help. So I don't believe, we're supposed to provide advice and input to decisions if we like them or not. So, or disagree with them or agree. So that's all I have. Final word I'll say on that.
Any other comments before the vote? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye. We have 3 in favor, Commissioners Schmolke, Casey, and Geisler, and 3 opposed, Commissioners Knobloch, Heikla, and Chair Schwartz. Motion does not pass.
It's not really a motion, is it? Am I misunderstanding?
There was a motion.
There
to
was a
recommend-
motion.
It's a-
Recommend approval.
A motion to recommend approval. Okay,
So,
that's the, it's going to council anyway.
Council decides.
somewhat saw this coming, and, I think the body, if it is 3-3, could make a motion that you abstain from making a recommendation. You could do that, or you take no position or something of that nature. But I think moving this item forward, you've done the public hearing, so that purpose is achieved. And this, we'd like to see some resolution to this evening, if you're able to come to a consensus.
Well, we have three in favor and 3 opposed, so it basically would be a non-recommendation.
Or we can postpone it to next month and maybe Ron will be available and
Mr.
he
Chair.
could provide input.
Commissioner Geisler,
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that in planning case 22-22, that the planning commission makes no recommendation to the city council.
I'll second.
motion by Geisler, second by Schmokey. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And that motion carries with Commissioner Knobloch opposed. All right. And on to other business.
Yeah, I guess for next month, we will have a site plan review for a car wash facility at the former Con site. We do have a conditional use permit at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. And then we are hoping to do a post-meeting kind of work session on an assisted living facility that, if we see that the council and commission are interested, exploring some different policy options that might involve a rezoning or a comprehensive plan amendment. So that's on the agenda for November.
All right. And Commission, anyone have anything for other business? Hearing none?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Casey, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.